Welcome to our live event, everyone, in our panel discussion on how to accelerate DevOps with AI. We're excited to host a panel discussion today where we'll be diving into AI development, progress, and the future, and what resources are available to you to accelerate your projects. Introduce you to the moderator for today, Shehan Fernando, our SVP of Global Sales and Modern Requirements, who will introduce you to our speakers for today. Shehan, take it away.
Good morning, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining. Just before I dive in and introduce some of the guest speakers we have today, we were really thinking about what would be an interesting topic. And we realized, wait a second, AI and DevOps is an interesting topic in and of itself. And what would that look like today and into the future? And then I thought, okay, well, who would be interesting folks to have join us to talk about it? And so we have two very unique folks on the call today. We actually have Shashi Bellamkondo, got it, I think I got it, who is joining us from Infotech, who is currently a principal research analyst. And he's had 20 years experience in tech marketing. He has been an early adopter of AI and machine learning and deployed it, so he's been there before. Also joining us is our founder and chief technologist, Asif Sharif, who has started many companies with using AI and driving value. If you would ask him, he'd tell you that he's a chief geek. And so he's going to talk a little bit about the technology side and what gets him excited about using AI and DevOps and how he's trying to bring that to the world.
So my journey to AI actually started probably 7 to 8 years ago. And what I was looking for is we had such a lot of data and we wanted to try to make sense of it. Those days it was very difficult to do that, and plus I got laughed out at the executive meeting because AI wasn't, or at least the purpose of AI wasn't as clear as it is today. So some of my use cases and success stories have been published in the Journal of Marketing Analytics, and also some of the strategies that I'm hoping to share can actually be shared across various industries and various organizations. Now, AI revolution has been happening for decades. If you, there's a lot of information on the internet on AI started in the 50s, and most technology leaders, and I've actually worked with a lot of good technology, forward-looking technology leaders, have been leveraging AI for revenue, for customer experience for a very long time. The big difference is they just called it machine learning. Some of these softwares are very familiar with you. I mean, these companies have tons and tons of data, terabytes of data. What they've been using AI for, instead of a human analyzing the customer data and the interaction data, they've been using AI to get you to a place as quickly as possible, as Waze does, give you some recommendations as Netflix does, get you a taxi as quickly as possible, even though Uber doesn't really own a single car, right? And the last one here, Amazon has been growing so fast, and a lot of it is almost like they are a logistical and AI company first, with the mission that they want to be the best customer experience company in the universe, right? Now, the takeaway from this slide is, for all of you in the audience, if you have lots and lots of data and your business users are not having a good access to the data, I think these are some good examples for us to follow that make sense. AI being used in automation, like tasks like picking up, packing, all within the confines of an atmosphere, has also been done by a lot of logistical companies for a very long time. Improves accuracy. You probably are not surprised if something you ordered on one of these e-commerce sites like Amazon or Walmart arrives probably within a couple of hours, if not the next day, right? But as technology leaders, as some of you probably are, the introduction of ChatGPT in November of 2022 has caused a little bit of confusion. Now, earlier, even though AI has started becoming a little bit cheaper in the last 5-6 years, data as processing power and data costs have been coming down, one of the most important things was that it was very difficult for a consumer or a layperson on the web to interact with AI. You always had to find a data scientist to go through. So with the introduction of ChatGPT, the whole world was able to access AI just through the browser. There were two problems with this. The first one was that people started getting scared because they started hearing about all the examples that AI could not do. The second problem was they were actually having an over anticipation, and the expectations were too high on this. So most technology leaders now have to deal with business users who are telling them, hey, I'd like AI to do everything for me, and others saying, how quickly can you implement it in that? So I've talked to a lot of organizations, from large Fortune 500 companies to even small startups. So I can see technology leaders facing that kind of challenge about user perception on that. What I recommend that everybody should do is bucket AI in 3 buckets. Analytical AI, uncovering trends in the large data sets that you have. You can actually, one of my examples is we could actually look at our entire prospect database and figure out who's most likely to convert into a customer. So analyze the data, predict what are some trends within the data. Weather today is a great example of how AI is being used to make weather predictions more accurate. Like we talked about Waze, you want to book travel now, there are a lot of good predictions on what is the best experience for you. So the generative part, you hear the term repeatedly and almost interchangeably with the word AI, is probably a derivative of doing analytical and predictive AI. Here are some examples that we are seeing from all the Infotech research group members of what are the top successful use cases. We had a call with some of the providers like Amazon, almost asking the same question about what are the top use cases. If you go from left to right, whatever is customer facing is very important. Now, the second most important thing is enhancing worker productivity and innovation. Let me ask you a question here. What would you do if you had like an extra an hour or two of your day because you were able to do something faster, easier, and probably more accurately? The chances are you're going to say that I can actually do more things. I can actually make things much more efficient. And that's the message I think most good AI practitioners are giving their audiences is don't think of AI as a replacement. It's very important to think of AI as assisting you with things that you may be taking a little more time than AI, or it's got a little bit more of a analyzing power and a predictive power than what you can do in a short amount of time. Now, I'm particularly going to look at like the improved customer experience, conversational AI. Financial institutions use it instead of the traditional interactive voice response system. When you call, you probably experience a conversational AI agent talking to you. And the most important thing now is it knows exactly at what moment it needs a human being rather than doing that. But in cases like password resets, in cases like login issues, AI is probably able to almost automate everything entirely. But if you look at natural language search, one of the biggest use cases that people are thrilled with is being able to query databases in natural language without having to learn SQL. That's very powerful. Content generation and code creation. Data to insights, again, like giving the business users the data as quickly as they want it without going through several loops. Document processing, we have several people who talk about how easy it is to summarize documents, to create emails based on the documents, fraud detection, optimizing process. These are some examples here. Very specific to, I'm going to take 3 use cases that you have to look for when you're planning to implement AI in your organization. The first one is error reduction. Improving code quality, analyzing and optimizing, reducing errors. I think this is of great value to most people analyzing data, business intelligence. I have some examples here. I was really amazed to see like people who are using AI in finance actually say that they have a 75% drop in financial errors. That's really huge. I mean, it is something that somebody had to do rework because of the errors, and then using AI to reduce rework, predictive maintenance, being able to this is across all industries and verticals. Intelligent devices, enhance safety. I actually use Google's Nest at Home, and because of that AI, it's able to actually predict when I need heat or cold very quickly, and is able to adjust the temperature accordingly. Then proactive project management. I used to work also in the construction industry, and that is really great to say, like, how do you need to staff people up when there's a weather event, or change schedules based on some of the activities that are going on. Ultimately, this will all lead to smarter DevOps and smarter software development. One thing that I've seen in projects is that people keep talking about we have a program management team, we have lots of people who are making sure that there's a collaboration atmosphere. But an MIT study actually found that there is at least one department that always gets missed out in the communication cycle. Usually it's customer service, because everybody is so within there. I mean, I'm talking about this a few years ago. I'm sure everybody has kind of figured that out. But what if your AI can look at your project and say, like, here are the impacts of all the other divisions that will need to be informed, that will need to change their systems. So some of these collaboration ones can actually be helped by AI. The example 3 here is about design collaboration. If you have a design team that has to go back and forth with their business users plus within their whole team on coming up with a very creative, nice branding campaign or otherwise, that's actually a good use case for collaboration. I'm thankful for Modern Requirements to have us on this webinar, and they are one of the companies that have a software for requirements. Some ways that AI can be used in requirements is removing ambiguity. Not often that a business user who comes up with the concept or the project is not going to be able to express themselves as easily as a technical person needs, right? Now with AI, some of the written can actually be a little bit assessed by AI, and then the AI can actually generate questions for you to ask and recommend the improvements. Traceability and impact analysis. This is really huge. Put in the chat how many of you in your life have actually had to roll back software releases because of some unintended consequence or something that you've forgotten. In my own previous life as a product manager, I think in one of the projects, the impact to the login screen was totally forgotten. So the entire backend was really created in a very customer-friendly way. But the next day, customers could not log in because we could not, connect some part of the login aspect. I'm pretty sure things have become much more smarter than almost a decade ago. But that's the kind of thing AI can look at all the patterns of your project that have already taken place and do that. And then prioritization and complexity management, it's actually going to be able to predict based on your own existing data on how long a project may take and how complex it can be. I wanted to talk about that, but in my takeaways for this is, again, think about AI not as something that's going to replace anybody's job, but as an intelligent agent that's going to help people with productivity. The best use of AI that I've found is people implementing AI into their existing software. That is the easiest. It's not a huge project. Your providers may already be doing that. And have a very firm data handling policy. Make sure that the data is not going out of your secure environment, or even if it is, there is some governance and policy on that. Make AI easy to use with natural language processing. save time for yourself and your your internal business users, and also try to make things processes very perfect into your existing process. I mean, a big takeaway is it's not always a successful project if you're going to say like, hey, we're going to change AI within the whole company, but take it in blocks so that you're able to show efficiency very quickly.
Thank you, Shashi. And actually, there's a few points that you made there that I found very interesting, and I want to quickly touch upon that with you if you don't mind. You mentioned ambiguity and incompleteness, and well, that's a challenge that we're trying to solve as well. Using AI, what are your thoughts on how we can use AI to help with ensuring that we're getting to a complete solution on the first pass, as opposed to waiting for someone downstream to figure it out and have to do rework? Well, what are your thoughts on leveraging AI on upfront, on try to get complete results upfront?
That's great. And actually, Chief Geek should also weigh in on this one. But as far as, I mean, if you use language models that are very specific to your use case, that has already understood, it's been trained on the concept, but has already understood your way of doing business. And that's the kind of AI implementation that's going to definitely help you, because it's totally customized for your use case, right? And I think that is a big win.
I agree. And one of the things that we're trying to solve as well, I mean, as Monarch Arms and Copilot for DevOps, is how do you augment the people that you have and the knowledge that you have with AI? And actually, I'd love to hear from Asif, from someone who loves technology. Someone loves technology. Asif, what are your thoughts? What are your thoughts on using AI to try to get to a completer solution upfront and try to reduce rework that way?
Right. Yeah. So one of the key problems we run
Asif,
into.
you're on mute.
Oh, am I?
Nope. Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay.
Okay, good. So one of the problems we build a lot of software. I've got 3 different companies that build different types of software. Is we miss out on important things, and especially because we build it iteratively and in an agile fashion, our prioritization is important. And of course, doing agile will catch up eventually. The question is, can you proactively know the scope of the work, and so you can prioritize your sprints appropriately? And we found using AI is a great way of getting to that point. The second thing is, the devil is in the details, and there are a lot of details that's often missed out. And so how do you know what a master plan could have been? And again, AI can be a great assistant there, so that you can know the big picture, and then you can sort of pick out the elements that you want to implement in every sprint. So yeah, I think AI is definitely a game changer in this space.
I want to add something from what Asif said. I think every company has got this OG. This OG is the subject matter expert who knows the software completely. Probably, Asif, you're the OG of your company. Now, very often, like if that person is not available, right? Like, what do people do? So your example of AI is a great example of having that kind of OG knowledge based on looking at all the requirements. Does that make sense, Asif?
Yeah, for sure, for sure. And even if you look at somebody who understands your system really well, and on good days, I do understand our systems really well. But there's so much to know. You miss things out, and you're distracted. This happens, that happens. So having a reference model, an AI system that knows the knowledge of the world at its fingertips and can bring forth that intelligence to serve you is just the best innovation in a long time.
Is there an example you can show us of how this would work?
So the way to install Copilot for DevOps is you simply go to the marketplace, and from Azure Marketplace you can simply search for Copilot for DevOps and install it. So in minutes, you would end up having this black circle there, which is our version 3, that you can start using right away. And you can use it for 30 days on a free trial. And then you can buy it. In fact, you'd want to buy it because it is so awesome. By the way, this is my latest brainchild. So I'm very pleased with how this has turned out.
I'm going to, a quick question for you, Shashi, kind of what we've seen for Elicit. You mentioned earlier that when we talked about AI in executive meetings, you were left out of the room. And as a former product owner, what would the value or use be to be able to get to all the different features of an Epic with a click of a button? Like, I'd love to hear how something like this could be very useful for someone like yourself in having that product owner role.
Yeah, great question. I think I'm thinking about my own experience in project management. Manual jobs used to be the most tedious. For example, if you were a product manager those days, if you had to give QA a lot of test cases, right? Stories that you have to write for that. You had to just sit back and use your own experience to think about all the possible things that you wanted to be tested, right? That's one use case. The second thing that Asif showed on the screen is what are all the different systems that are going to be impacted. That wasn't always very clear. Like I'm sure Asif has a few war stories of decades ago, but these are two like pain points that people actually see, right? So I mean, why not have AI? It's almost like you built your own like system within your company to be able to tell you, hey, don't forget about this. And the other thing is to say like, hey, I've seen stories being created, so I'm going to automate the story creation, if that makes sense. So, Asif?
Yeah, I was going to ask you, Asif. I mean, that was a challenge that you look to solve from a technology perspective, and how do you manage change? And that seems like a very manual process. So we have a change that's happening. How do we handle that, right? How do you approach it from a technological perspective?
So one of the things we did, I mean, in addition to being able to elicit requirements and test cases and integration test cases and all of that, you can perform impact assessment. So typically what you do when you make a change, you have to determine what is the impact of the change. All the areas, all the requirements, all the business rules, all the test cases, what is going to get impacted? How do you determine that? That's a difficult process. It's a time-consuming process if you want to get it right. And if you don't spend the time, then you're going to get regression issues, right? You'll get regression bugs. So you do want to get it right. Now, using the impact assessment tool, what you can do is you could go, and what I'm going to do here quickly, I just had the command written there. What I'm going to do is I'm going to say, I'm going to tell it, I'm building, in this example, I'm building a baggage management system for an airport.
Okay.
So what I want to do is I want to say, look at that system, which is the root of it, and then tell me that the change I want to do is that I want to implement biometrics for passenger identification. Okay. And go do the analysis for me and start with the top level. And so it's telling me the top level item has some impact. So it's telling me what the impact is going to be and what are the various tasks we have to perform. And when I clicked on next level, it's telling me that security system integration is the biggest area where the impact is going to be, because that impact is 5 out of 5. Okay. And you can go down the rabbit hole and so on and so forth. So the system now is looking at all that linked information in your requirement system and saying, if you make this change, all of these areas are going to get impacted.
So let me ask you this, having led the dev side for as long as you have, and you started a couple of companies that are using AI, how has this impacted dev and their ability to assess change and and save time. And I'd love to get your sense on, from a practical sense, using the tool. How does it change the way you work and how the team work?
So you know what? A year ago, when we started to develop Copilot for DevOps, we were working with Microsoft initially to come up with the strategy, and this GPT approach with Microsoft was still in the early stages. We were working with the Microsoft AI team to see how this should be built out. And as it started to take form, my direction to all my teams across the board, not only dev, but also operations and support. And of course, operations has many other divisions, was we are today about 125 or number of people in the company. And my direction was that within 1 year, which I would expect this year would be 2024, we should operate as a 250-person organization without any new hires. Now, if you bring more people on board, there will be so much 2x of that. But my objective for the team was that we have to 2x our productivity, and that's using AI. And so our product owners use Copilot, they'll use Elicit, they'll use Analyze to look at the requirements and see how well was it written, and so on and so forth. And then when you get to testers will create test cases and integration test cases, and will create test scripts using Copilot. So they'll use either Gherkin format or one of the other frameworks that we use. We'll use test cases there. For a lot of our internal applications, our operations team will use no-code development using Codeless One, which is another product in our family of companies. But the clear focus has been, we need to improve our productivity, we need to get smarter and better, because if we don't, others are going to, and we will be left behind. So our mission was to establish a management team who owns the responsibility to 2x our productivity within the company-wide operations.
I have one quick follow-up question, and this is going to be to you, Asif, but I'd love to get your thoughts on it as well, Shashi. So if we're taking 125 people, augmenting them with AI, try to get 250 people worth of productivity, right? What are the risk factors and concerns that you may harbor around? What if the system hallucinates? What if we're not getting the fidelity of response that you're hoping for? Like, what are your thoughts on that? What are your thoughts on putting that trust into a GPT when sometimes there are hallucinations? I'd love to get your thoughts and ideas on that.
Yeah, that's a good one. That's a really good one. You see, 2 points. The first point is Asif GPT also hallucinates a lot. Okay? All of us hallucinate. We all fill in the gaps, right? So that's no different from GPT. In fact, I think GPTs tend to hallucinate way less than any of us, right? That's one part to it. The other part is you do need processes. You need quality process. You need a human looking at it. And of course, if AI hallucinates and you hallucinate or you get distracted, then yeah, something might get missed. But the chances of that happening is much, much lower than without AI. What do you think, Sashi?
Great question about hallucination. I think, let's say you were writing an exam and then you write a wrong answer. You can't explain that as like, hey, it's hallucination, right? So there's obviously somebody who's overlooking and making sure that you write the right answer. So in both in human beings and in AI, AI is not going to be like 99% perfect in most scenarios, unless the whole functionality of AI is within the confines of something that is repeatedly learned. So having the human in the loop is always going to be the best practice. And it's only when you are absolutely sure that you have the AI trained in such a way on very specific data that the perfection of AI is going to keep increasing. I think the hallucination with an open system that is available to the public is much higher, like Asif said, than in a system that you've built for a very specific use case, if that makes sense.
That does. So it sounds like, maybe as human beings we're perfectly imperfect, but, right? And our AI systems are getting closer to perfection, but hey, listen, ultimately having a human being in the driver's seat is the best option. It's kind of what I'm hearing. Do I have that right?
Yeah, actually, like, AI is learning from us. It could be a little creative, but even the creativity comes from whatever it has learned from what human beings have created, right? Like, for example, you put the joke in the beginning of this webinar. AI doesn't create too many good jokes because there are not the amount of jokes that are available on the internet or otherwise. There are not huge repositories of jokes. So chances are, if you go and look at 2 to 3 LLMs, you get the same joke. So yes, I think it's a continuous process of interaction between AI learning from what human beings have created. But the power that AI brings is going to do it faster, quicker, and easier and save you time.
I think that's a perfect segue. One of the things that you had mentioned earlier, Shashi, in your slides is around prioritization and complexity, and that's a prime area for AI to augment, save time, and be more accurate and be more efficient. Asif, I know that you've been working on some tooling, and you call it a dynamic prompt, to specifically attack complexity and specifically find efficiencies in time. And I love to see that in action. And maybe the folks on the call may have some questions on that topic. I'd love to see dynamic prompt in full action on how you're attacking complexity and trying to help people save time and be more accurate.
Yep,
yeah, I have an observation after Asif finishes showing us this cool-looking prompt library.
Okay. Yes. So folks, imagine you have a system that your company sells, and that system has 500 features and with many function points within it. And a client of yours comes and says, here's my request of what I need. This is my RFP, if you will. Tell me what of these things you guys do. Now, the RFP is 50 pages long. It's got a lot of stuff in it, and your system specs are very detailed. You need to do a gap analysis. We have been working with a client who has this exact problem in the hospital space. They build a hospital system, and they take weeks with a team of folks to do that gap analysis so they can come up with a strategy. But now what they can do is they can come here, give it 2 queries of what the client is looking for and what the system does. They can write the appropriate prompt. Now, this is a simple little prompt, and they can run it to come up with a gap analysis between the 2. So it's now doing sort of a comparison between the client requirements and the system features. Now, the system we have is very comprehensive. So there's only a few things are missing. It's finding the needle in the haystack situation. How do you know what is missing, right? Of course, if there could be bigger gaps, you would identify all of those gaps, and instead of taking all that time, you run this off with your 2,000 work items, And this will go and it'll tell you that of all of these, is there anything missing? And then at the bottom is going to give you a summary of it. Okay. So the dynamic prompt that is one of the use cases of dynamic prompt. The other use case of dynamic prompt we have is to do with, so let's say I go to these requirements here, and I have written up a prompt there. And what I'm going to do is I'm simply going to go here, call upon Copilot again. This time I'll go to the dynamic prompt. My context is the selected work items, and I'll tell it to prioritize my user stories and tell me its complexity. Okay? So now it's going to take that set of work items, its description, acceptance criteria, whatever the user story has, and then we'll go ahead and tell me how essential is it, what is the level of complexity based on the definition. Of course, this is just an example. You could get it to do a lot of other things, which would otherwise be very time consuming. Now it can be outsourced to AI to do work with you, and then you can review it, make sure everything is good.
Yeah, no, this is really great. So my observation on this is like, again, I'm a little bit apprehensive of how everybody thinks of AI by just using the ChatGPT example through a browser, right? A clear example of image creation. You have to know. I mean, I actually tested this out. I had to write a 3-page prompt to be able to get an image that was perfect and it met all my needs. So it's not easy all the time to be able to create prompts. So my point here is like choosing a solution that you don't need, you can do natural language, but you don't need to write 3 to 10 pages of prompts to get an answer. I mean, it might even make the human being say like, instead of writing a prompt, let me do the task myself. Right. So I think tools like a prompt library, what you've shown here, are pretty good time savers and also help people in the direction that they need to go to get the right results from the AI. Would you agree?
Yeah, for sure. And that's the reason we took this approach, to have the system know what needs to be done, at the same time give you the ability to embellish on it and add your own part of the prompt to make systems do things differently.
Asif, and I'm going to go with a little bit of controversy. You know, the NVIDIA CEO a few months back said that coding is going to die and AI is going to take over, and now some people agree that maybe that's what the future might go. Some people say, no, you're always going to need level of coding to be able to fine tune what you need. I'd love to get your thoughts on, where you stand on that, Shashi, and then right after, I'd love to see and ask if what your thoughts are on that and how you're trying to solve that using technology. So, Shashi, to you.
Yeah, I mean, it's a great model to aspire to, but here's what I've seen in talking to a lot of companies, very specific to coding. As an intelligent assistant, extremely useful. I mean, I think developers don't like to code the same thing repeatedly over and over again. And my friend Asif will probably be able to keep me honest here too. So for tasks where you're going to say like, hey, bring this from the library and do this, it's really great. I mean, it can create apps, it can do a lot of things. But as the concepts become more complicated, the AI starts showing weakness because it hasn't learned what you're trying to achieve if it has not been built before, or if it has not spotted a pattern that it can repeat again. So we're not there yet. Whether we'll be there, I think it will take a long time. But jobs have always changed. For example, we don't have any like elevator operators anymore, right? Like because elevators have all become independent. Like I was just thinking about, what are the kind of jobs? Proofreading jobs. I've heard just yesterday can actually be done for a large part by AI, but have some human being to finalize the proofreading and things like that. So for coding to become coders to go away, I think it's going to take time. But the coders who know how to use AI are going to be much more efficient and much more wanted than people who are not using AI. If that makes sense. What do you think, Asif?
Yeah. I mean, today, my team, my dev team, have probably increased the productivity by about 70%. So we started this endeavor about a year and a half ago with Copilot GitHub. They are producing a staggering amount of more code and better quality code. But I still have the same team. We're just doing more with the team we have, with the use of working with AI. Let me give you an example. So we built a product called Codeless One. Okay, so Codeless One is a sister product to Copilot. So in Copilot v3, which we are launching next week at the live event in Las Vegas. But what you can do is you can come here and you can say, hey, you know what I want to do? Let's say I want to build an asset management system. And if I want to build an asset management system, I just give it a name. Now, if I had a big description, I could do that. And then you go next. And what it does is it tells me what are the types of objects or entities I need in my system. Okay. And it's going to recommend some of them by default. And I said, no, I also want to manage vendors and management and maintenance of it. I want to know insurance on those things, and I need other things. Okay. So it'll come up with these recommendations for you. And when you're happy with this and you can edit things directly in here and add things and so on, and then you go next. And it comes up with your relationships between the objects. He's saying in a portfolio, you can have many assets. Assets could have many transactions. I guess you do a purchase and maintenance transactions, and so on and so forth. Okay, so you define this or you change this if you need to, or unselect it and so on. Ultimately, you click on Create App. This will create the application for you. And the application it creates for you looks like this. This application that you're looking at was totally created by AI and automation. Okay?
Oh, wow.
Thanks to Codeless One.
Okay. There's some questions there.
Yeah.
I really appreciate Kat Chewing's comment on our conversation so far. But one question, maybe if I can take the lead on this, Sheehan, is
Yeah, of course.
can I enable Copilot for selected projects or users in my organization? This is from Yannick Luca Rutgers.
Yes, you can. You can, because Copilot is licensed, so you can decide who you want to get licensed for. In the deployment option so the default deployment option that is at the organization level, but if you do need to have a more selective deployment option, please reach out to us and we'll provide the guidance, but it can be.
Yep.
Happy to jump on the next question here. His requirements gathering has a lot of interviewing and of the business and domain experts. How can AI help?
So from an interviewing point of view, one of the things you can do is you can go to the Q&A assistant, and I actually wrote one question down. So let's say you are building a asset management system, and so there is a standard called ASTM E3257-21. Okay? So there is a standard out there that helps you with asset taxonomy, okay, best practices. And so you want to use that as part of your elicitation process. So you go to the Q&A assistant, you give it the topic, and you click generate. It will go and come up with a series of questions. Okay. And if you click on the questions, it'll tell you it'll actually give you an answer. And you can use this as a starting point, or this could be the final work item you want to create, requirement you want to create. So it'll come up with many questions. You can say, hey, give me more questions. I'll give you more questions. And so you can actually use this Q&A assistant to initiate a conversation with your stakeholders. But when they say, what do you mean by it? Then you basically click on it, bring this up and say, here's sort of the context of how the answer could be presented. So the Q&A assistant is a great tool for requirements during elicitation. Of course, you could just take this and go to elicit function and then just ask it to give you your requirements. But the Q&A assist has a more of a collaborative interviewing format approach to elicitation.
Great question, Nikhil Karya. I've heard that repeatedly being asked in other places too. Good question.
So actually, I'm going to touch upon Kat Chung's question here. He says, banks and risk management for banks, responsible AI, especially for executive, the type of considerations one for executives need to be, what type of considerations do executives need to keep in mind as they prioritize and take actions and customer experience versus cost reduction? So I just want to share a quick anecdotal story. I had a conversation with the CTO, and the question was, do they want to implement AI or not? And they're leaning on not. And so the question I posed back was, how many people within your organization are secretly using ChatGPT, but not officially? And so she took that away, and she came back and said, yeah, you know what, you're right. I'd rather them use a tool that is sanctioned, that's using Azure AI Service, that has the learning turned off, and she has some rules around it, than having people go behind the back of the organization and using AI. So rather give them a path to do it, as opposed to saying no and have people do it behind the scenes. So that was just kind of a real life example of a conversation I had with the CTO, and then the subsequent decision that they made around, no, actually, you want to have it embedded in our system. And that actually kind of touches on the point that you made earlier, Shashi, on using current infrastructure and current tooling and having AI solutions that are embedded to make it a better, customer and user experience.
Great. I have a slightly different aspect to this question. Kat, a great question. Yeah. Now, and I've seen this repeatedly, like when you want to use a tool for productivity gains, if you just go to your executive level and say like, hey, we're going to gain productivity, we are going to reduce the time for requirements from 1 week or 10 weeks to 1 week. That's great. I'm happy for you guys. Let's move on. But if you're able to say like, what if these productivity gains can turn into more revenue by being able to have capacity for more projects, is a much better sell, if that makes sense. So I think I've been advising a lot of our clients almost exactly like you said, Sheehan, is following the dollar is much better than anything that's internal. So for example, there was another company that shortens the time it takes for legal briefs to be created. But if you just say like, hey, you can create legal brief quickly, you've got to translate it to, which means that the same amount of people can actually do more. If that does that make sense? It's just a nuance of how you present it, if that makes sense, Kat. Hope that was useful.
Actually, you know what, Shashi, you said something earlier on this topic in a previous conversation we had that really resonated with me. And you said that AI, the role of AI can really be in having happier customers. And if we build the right things, if we deliver it faster, we build better quality, we build things that they need, then you'll have happier customers. And ultimately, whether your customers are internal or external, our mission, I believe, ought to be to keep our customers happy and be successful with what they do. And I think AI can help you with getting there.
Absolutely, 100%.
So I think we should take one more question, and then maybe we'll turn it the closing thoughts. So the last question I have here is, can AI predict future requirements or trends based on current data? And if so, how reliable are those predictions?
It's all you, Asif.
So one of the things that Elicit will give you, so you could go to Elicit and say, give me requirements, but you could come here and you can say, give me AI related requirements that is cutting edge. Okay. So you could give it prompts to think about a certain aspect of things, and then as you drill down into this intelligent monitoring or these other things, automated license, this and that, you end up looking at things in different ways. That's one way to look at it. The other way to look at it, in version 4 of Copilot, which will have out hopefully sometime this winter, there's going to be the ability to bring your own data. So in that case, Copilot can be trained on your data. Of course, that will only be used for your needs and your access, but it can be trained on it, and it can build on your knowledge. Because right now, this is using publicly available data. But soon enough, it can use your own internal data, in which you can include your strategy documents, your vision documents, your product specs, your user manuals, everything. Now, AI will be the master of your domain as well as the global domain. And together, I think it'll produce some amazing stuff that you can work with.
I think just a simplistic answer from what I've read is weather, right? The ability to predict weather events based on historical data could be one example of this.
Interesting. Yeah, and I think what you described as if using global knowledge and also private and internal knowledge and being able to use AI to consider both to help organizations iterate is truly, I believe, is the holy grail of value generation for organizations using AI. So with that bombshell, I wanted to thank everyone for joining, and I wanted to turn it over to you, Shashi, for some closing thoughts as we wrap up this discussion today.
Yeah, I think just kind of lower the hype a little bit and talk about very practical ways that your organization can implement AI. The best buy-in you will get is if you take your existing systems and make them more efficient and connect them with your company goals. So if your company goal for the next year is X, just say like, here are 3 projects that are easy to implement, use existing infrastructure with a little bit of additional, software or otherwise, and use AI to meet the company goals. Thank you for having me, and I appreciate all the audience questions.
Excellent.
Thank you, everyone.
Well, thank you, guys.
I'd love for everybody to connect on LinkedIn, and thanks a lot.
All right.
And thank you, everyone. Last thought, we're actually getting together next week at InfoTalk Live at Exponential IT, where Asif will be speaking as well as Shashi. And so stay tuned for more interesting content around AI and DevOps and really what the future holds and how, from a technological perspective, you have Asif, and from a thought leadership perspective, you have Shashi. So stay tuned and catch us on the next one. Thank you, everybody.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.